Coffee Hour. Welcome to Coffee with our morning host. We broadcast a host of programs like current topics, newspaper headlines, and music on Radio Sri Lanka. Tune in every weekday from 7 to 8 a.m.
Today we have the COO of Tikshana, associated with the University of Colombo. This is an institution.
It's a company that was set up in 2007 by Professor Samanayaka, in 2007. This associates with University of Colombo, but we are right now kind of semi-independent.
Right.
So it's it's an academic board. Earlier the company was on campus, and now it basically moved out. And so it's a kind of like it's a consultancy arm. So, earlier, right now it is independently, it runs as a company.
Well, thank you very much for briefing us as to what Tikshana, the company, is all about. And we are glad to have you here with us this morning, Mr. Harsha Wijayawardhane. And you've been with us before, but today we're going to talk about ICT, which is your main line. So we're going to have a very laid-back conversation on how ICT has evolved over the times, like when you started off and now. I'm sure you see a major difference.
Yeah, in fact, ICT, of course, goes back, I think almost, if you take it, you can't say ICT per se. So it's like ICT, I think the history, from 1950s. But if you look at right now, when you look at, I think it has evolved in the sense like now it has taken, I think the ICT has taken your whole it's part of your life right now. If you work with social media, if you go to Facebook, all of that is ICT right now. So it's wherever you go. So ICT is you are basically going to work, you are associating ICT, some parts of ICT, whether you do logistics or in all over the world. So that's right now it has taken I think that's one of the things I think you have to, but in like when you look at the history, because I did my undergraduate in US, so that was in 1980s. From then, if you look back, if you reminisce, you see a couple of things. One is the internet, which originated in US in the latter part of 1960s. Then the 70s came and the 80s. 80s when I was in the university, it was limited to email. Right now, today that you have the social media. So when I came back to Sri Lanka, internet was also in its infancy here in Sri Lanka. So the commercial internet has come in 1995. So we had to do quite a lot of stuff to bring the internet to this level right now. Now we are talking about multilingual internet. I can talk about that later because I'm part of that whole evolution right now. There is another part to this. What's happening with, if you look at the AI, right? So a lot of people are talking about AI today right now, ChatGPT and Bard and all of these, the tools that are coming up. So when you look at that part, so now you are looking at entirely different. So you will have, very soon you will have vehicles, driverless vehicles.
It's on test already.
It's been done right now. It's a matter of, I think, years. I think 1 or 2 years. I think we are going towards that. Even now the vehicles, if you look at a vehicle right now, even the latest vehicles, right, you will see these sensors connected to it, and it's the vehicle itself is connected to the internet, so that you can actually monitor the vehicle, so the mechanics can even look at how the engine works, So all of that through this, the latest technology. So that is where we are heading right now. So there is also fear. Now, last night I was playing chess, for instance, right? I love to play chess. So I played against the computer. The computer is better than me sometimes, right? I mean, so that depends on the levels that you play.
Exactly.
So I feel, I think I played a couple of hours last night, right? About 1 or 2 hours. So, I mean, the point I'm trying to make it is actually, even the best chess player in the world, right now, the number one, I mean, the few years back, I think about 10 years or even 20 years back, I think, the dark blue actually, basically defeated the world chess champion, right? So that's where that's going. So there is a fear that the world will be taken over. I think everyone was talking about, right? I mean, including some of the top people. So they are all trying to figure it out whether the creativity of people will be gone.
I was about to get there because many people are dependent on, let's say, mentioned about ChatGPT, and then there are so many other ways and means of, creating stuff with using AI. So, I mean, it really scares us to the extent where, like, when we used to do projects back in the days, it used to be a lot of hard work. It used to be a lot of reference, and then, life is easier right now. But still, does this, pose a threat to education?
Well, yes or no. For me, actually, yes or no. Then you would tell me the same thing about the internet also. I mean, earlier days, actually, we used to read and we had to go to the library and we had to, search. Now you don't have, everything is at your fingertips. That all depends. But I think, in my mind also, now they want to give a little bit of, kind of like I can't remember who actually said it, that we need to give a little break for 10 years, the research. It's going really fast right now. The research is right now, obviously if the same momentum, if it takes the way it's happening right now, very soon there'll be a lot of stuff going to happen. So the fear is the creativity. So the humans are highly creative. And all of these things, even AI, it's a human creation. ICT is a human created science. Unlike, if you talk about physics or chemistry or biology. So we basically discover the laws, the natural laws that we are discovering, and then we sort of come up with, those sciences. The maths is actually the language of the science, right? So the point here is that where we are evolving right now, that's where the fear is, because if the creativity is gone, that's the end of humanity. So that's what the fear that I think people have right now. However, there is good things about AI also. So we need to see the balance and how we are going to sort of move forward. Isaac Asimov, have you heard of her?
I've heard the name.
Right, he's a science fiction writer. He like Arthur C. Clarke, right? So one of the very first science fiction writers. And the very interesting about the robotics, the rules, so that he predicted this would happen long time back. So there are some rules, the robots, the Isaac Asimov gave the rules right now. That means we should be able to pull the plug if you want. In the sense. The robots, these rules actually, when you program, one of the things is that the humans basically keep the dominance. But now that, you may not be able to see that. So those actually rules are laid down by Isaac Asimov long time back.
Because he knew that this could happen.
Obviously that, there were several science fiction writers actually wrote about it. If I do remember, there's another one is 1989, or I can't remember the book. So all of that actually was predicting. I have not read Arthur C. Clarke. I can't remember. Well, actually, the good one is 2001, right? 2001. What happened with the when the spacecraft going to Jupiter, gave two different, to the computer, right? And so it did something wild. I mean, like it took over so all of that actually, so that I think, so this was actually talked about over the years. Now, when I was actually in the university, it was a different era. Now it's entirely different. Even in the US, it was a different era. When I went to the university, it was a punch card time. The computers are fairly big. And the memory is very small. Right now, even my mobile has more memory than what I used to use when I was in my undergraduate days. So that's what has happened.
It has certainly evolved in a big way.
Yeah.
And as you say that, we shouldn't be completely dependent and lose the creativity side of us, I guess. As you say, we need to remove the plug sometimes.
We should be able to remove the plug. I think the humanity has to. So this is where that you need to think how we are going to, because the sciences right now, it has come a long way. Now, when I was an undergraduate, it was a time that the human genome sequencing was happening.
Okay.
Right. So within about 5 to 10 years, actually, the whole our genome, that is what we made of, right, was totally basically sequenced and documented. So today, if you want to know what gene actually does what, basically, you would just have to go and search it on the internet itself.
Wow.
Or you can go to their volumes and you can take it up and you can look at how actually your body works. So I think, so those days in 1980s when I was an undergraduate, so I remember the time that we had certain hypotheses actually, or the theories how the DNA worked. Some of the things actually turned out to be wrong. Like, for instance, now if you take, for instance, human beings are not we are some of the complex beings, right? However, our DNA is not the largest, or if you look at the complexity, some like salamanders carry three copies or 2 copies of the DNA. So these are so some of the things that we learned. Now the whole what we made up is about 16,000 bases or something like that. We are not that far different from chimpanzee, for instance, right? It's about a 0.5% of a difference that you have.
0.5?
Yeah, it's a very small person. To be an ape, the apes, we are part of ape group, so we are not that far different from. So these are the things what we have learned for the last, I think 1980s. Now it's about 40 years. Within that 40 years, we have learned so much about how we work, how our body works, all of that, right? If you look at my father's time, my father was born in Sri Lanka, and during in 1930s, right, the early 30s. So look, he saw the human beings going to the moon, right? And some of the evolution of the jet engine, or by that time the Wright brothers have actually invented the airplane, so they could fly. However, they had not seen a jet, right? So we actually could fly faster than a speed of sound. So in his lifetime, he saw so many things when he passed away. Now, in our lifetime, we are also coming now about 40 years, within the 40 years of my life. the 50 years of my life, but the 40 years of my my career, right? What I have seen is an entirely a different world. I mean, even in the US, when we were there, it was a punch card time, as I said, big, computers, So it's very different today.
It certainly is.
But the way my perception of evolution, right? The scientific, basically the science fiction, right? The thing that I used to, the envisage, or I used to think that this is how we are going to evolve, but that didn't happen the way that I thought. I thought by now, by 2020, we would be on Mars. This is my dream, when I was in the university. But this had not happened. I thought we would colonize the moon, right? We didn't do that.
We
are yet to do that. So those things have not happened.
But many other things.
But many other things have happened, like for the transplant, then the DNA,
medical advancements,
the medical advances, the technologies. Some of them actually were invented or developed for space, right? We have space internet. Windsurf actually talked about. Windsurf is one of the founding fathers of internet, right? And he is the one who came up with the TCP/IP, the protocol that we use for internet today. That basically I remember going to one conference where he was speaking, and he was talking at that particular conference. At that particular conference, he introduced what you call space internet. So that there is space internet right now, if you want. So these are the things that basically we. So it's a very different from what I
predicted.
What I thought it would be, right? But that's not what happened. So it's kind of interesting. But when you look at the sciences, like if you take physics, for instance, you talk about physics now. A lot of I also studied physics as a subject, at the university. So we talked about entanglement, we talked about quantum mechanics, we talked about relativity. So there are a lot of things actually. The understanding of that, some of the things like quantum mechanics, right? I think that had evolved. Now we are going to have a quantum computing, right? It's a four qubits. So those things actually happen. But the evolution of some of the things that I thought would happen, by now we would have Einstein wanted to do that, to derive one single equation to understand the whole universe, right? That is like the big universe and the smaller quantum universe, which what we are talking about. They would basically we would be able to understand how it works. That had not happened. So I thought when I was an undergraduate, and now having looked back retrospectively, that had not happened. So still we are working on that. Right. So we're still working on it. We have not understood how that actually works. That part. We have understood the subparticles, how it works, but we have not understood that part. So we have not done that part.
Well, obviously, there's a lot of interesting things happening in the world in terms of advancements, I'd say. We are in conversation with Mr. Harsha Wijayawardhane, and we've been talking a lot about, very interesting evolution and about how things have changed, and it's interesting how we can be dependent, but at the same time we have control over it as well. So, Mr. Wijayawardhane, let's also talk about some of the notable projects you've done for the government and you're currently working on.
Yeah, so Teekshana, actually before Teekshana also, so there was this software development unit of the University of Colombo School of Computing. So we worked on a lot of government, because that's what Professor Manaka envisaged to do, but then we do not only the government but also private sector and also international projects, right? So one of the notable ones are we developed the automated fingerprint identification system for the police, the Department of Police. Today they are using our system. So when there is something happens, like somebody breaks into your house, the police comes and takes the fingerprints. They are putting into our system. So that system is right now one of the very successful stories of the Sri Lankan IT. Because for the last, now it's been almost 10 years, I think. So they are doing, and we are working further on that. And the accuracy is also very high. It's about 99.99% of accuracy of the 10 print, what we call a 10 print identification. Then there is a latent print identification. Latent prints are where that you lift these or you photograph them. They put a dust and they bring those fingerprints that whatever that you have touched. It's about more than about 60 to 70% accuracy. So that's fairly high when you look at the international level as well. FBI, they're talking about 35 to 55%. So we have fairly high accuracy. Then we worked on the recent ones we are working on is the electronic government procurement. So the government procurement will be online. So we are one of the very few countries which that does not have a electronic government procurement. So most of the government procurement, that is actually some of the largest expenditure that the government has after salaries. Right, wow. The public sector salaries. So the government buys things, right? So when they buy, so they have tender process. That means it has to be transparent, and so all of that basically now this electronic government procurement is going to bring, and it has been there. We have been doing it for the last 2 years. And it has a method. There are several methods like national competitive bidding, international competitive bidding. There is something called shopping. Shopping has been there for now almost 1 year. So there are about 2,000 plus procurement had gone through the system. So we are coming up. So the next couple of years, I think the next year, they are going to have national competitive bidding and ICB, that's international competitive bidding. So all of that is going to happen within a very short period of time. So we are doing that right now. It's a fairly big project. And so majority of our staff is involved with that, academics and the programming staff as well. And in addition to that, we are doing a very interesting project right now with the. So I work very closely with the Internet Corporation for Assigned Name and Numbers. That is what the Internet is run. Basically, there are stakeholder organizations. ICANN is one of them. So that's called ICANN. And Internet cannot run without what we call a roots DNS service. So these are run by these DNS servers. There are about 13 main root servers, and those are run by ICANN. So they are working on right now what we call a universal acceptance. That is we had 3-letter what we call top level domains, .coms, .orgs. Then came 5 to 7 top level domains, co-ops, the museum, and all of that. So all of that actually right now, and then came the internationalized domain names. Now, right now, Sri Lanka has 2 domain names. These are called country code top level domains. We have a .lk in Latin, and in Sinhala, we have a .lanka in Sinhala script, and then we have .ilange in Tamil. So Sri Lanka was one of the very few countries, I think one of the first countries to get the delegation of the IDNs, internationalized domain names. So the Universal Acceptance Project, so the idea is that whatever, whether it's how long, how old, all of this should be able to function together. So one of the things that I'm working very closely with ICANN is to introduce these, awareness, the increased awareness of IDNs, plus now we have single email addresses. So if you want to have a single, so they should function with the Latin email addresses. And so we have created the platforms. There are 2 platforms right now running. So,
talk about the advantages with it.
Well, there are quite a bit of advantage. You see, the problem here is, now in your mind, all of us actually live in this Latin world, right? The Latin is now no more. Now, I mean, if you go now, like the Latin world in the sense, now if you go to Arabic countries, they use Arabic email addresses. The Chinese content is larger than almost same as now the English, the Latin, right? So we live in an English world, but there is a French world out there. There is a Spanish world out there. Then so we look at this. So the technology is bridging the gap right now. So when I speak in English, someone can translate into Sinhala or Tamil. Right, I mean the live translations right now. So that is what the technology has done. So today we don't have much in the translators, in even Sinhala and Tamil, right? So that can be done by the machine assisted translations, right? So this is called natural language processing. So that's happening right now. So if I send an email in Sinhala to you, completely Sinhala, that is even the email address even, your Google or Gmail, it will turn on the translator. So it will translate for you. So the idea is, what the ICANN is talking about is, it will bring another 1.5 billion people to the internet. Right now there are about 5 to 6 billion people on the internet. The total population is 8 billion people. Now India is using this for their advantage, their own, basically for their own advantage. Like, I'll give a simple example. English speakers in India is roughly about 235 million people. That's fairly huge. It's like the same as the American population. However, what they tell me, the North Indians write in Devanagari, the script. 60% of the Indian population can read and write Devanagari. So that's almost 600 million people. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to move to Devanagari. There is an issue with basically if you take South India, where you have a Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam, because they have their own scripts. Some of them also can actually write and read. So there is a IDN called .Bharat in Devanagari, and also in Tamil, Malayalam. Now they are issuing email address for each and every citizen in India in their own languages. So the idea is that what they believe is the language, the barrier, right, should be basically can be the bridge can be you can bridge it with the technology, right? The translation, the machine assisted translation, and all of that. You can optimally work in your own language. Now, if you take Sri Lanka, for instance, there are about 7 to 8% are the ones who will if you take the population percentage, about 7 to 8% are very good in English. I mean, they speak, and unlike India, the Sri Lankans are, for them, when they are 6 years of age or whatever, when they're preschool even, right, they will learn Latin script as well. That's something part of their syllabus, and they will learn. However, the language competency is about, it's less than the computer literacy, right? Mm-hmm. So the technology can bridge that gap. So that's what we are.
That's the advantage.
Something advantage, yeah.
Yes.
Then you can work optimally. You can work. Exactly. So at the same time, you can. In terms of whether you have an email address, you have the choice. You can either use in Sinhala, Tamil, or English. So all of them work without any discrimination or any issue at all. So that's the idea of universal acceptance.
That's about bringing in people who have no access or who never wanted to access to this because of language barriers?
Language barrier is, the language. Now, I speak 2 languages very well, but I also can speak other languages. But what I'm trying to tell you is that the language should not be a barrier for your career. And also the creativity, the human, that aspect actually comes. Now, if you think, let's say, you look at Thailand or you go to Japan, they're doing their own language, right? So now in Japan, it was the very first country to go for IDNs, international domain names, .jp, right? So they came up with it. So IDNs came in 2003. The Japan was one of the very first countries to lead that. So now the China, Japan, Korea, they are working in their own languages. So it's not a barrier. So the technology also has bridged the gap. That's what I'm talking about.
And I think it's a great initiative, I'd say, to introduce.
Well, it has been going on for some time. Sri Lanka is very slow to adopt it. I think because of the Latin, I think we are a small population and our people are much more aware of the Latin script, and they have learned. I think so. Therefore, it's not for us, it's not this thing. But there are people who like to have now. Like, friend, if you look at when I was involved in developing Sinhala, the script for the computers, right? I never thought how it will shape Sri Lanka. It has shaped Sri Lanka. Now today the marketing, if you start when you take the marketing data, they don't give you in English. They give you in Sinhala. They will say this much up, this is your, the exposure, for instance, the advertising exposure. So they talk about Sinhala. They talk about Tamil. They talk about Sinhala. They don't talk about English. So that's how the social media has done to that in our own languages. So very soon, there is a choice for you. You can have even the IDNs, international domain names. That means even your domain name can be in Sinhala. Lanka, totally in Sinhala. Now the government actually talks about all the public institutions, when the websites of the public institutions, they should carry in Sinhala, Tamil, and the content should be in Sinhala, Tamil, and English. In the future, these 3 separate domain names can be there. That means one domain for English content, one in the English, Latin. There's a second one in Tamil. The third one is in Sinhala. So now, even that will be very, you take, for instance, Lotus Tower. You don't say Lotus Tower in Sinhala, Lotus Tower, right? You don't say. You say it's a Nelunkuluna. So you can have a Nelunkuluna.Lanka in Sinhala, which will lead to the content, Sinhala content. So the people are comfortable to work. So you don't need to worry about, now even right now, some of the SMSs now, government institutions send in English. Emails in English. But then the understanding, they may not comprehend. So the people can actually in a dire strait sometime, right? If you send it in Sinhala, most people, the majority would be able to understand. If it sends in Tamil, people will be able to understand. So that is what it should be. The language must be for comprehension. Should be able to comprehend better.
Yes.
Not for anything else. To be able to communicate easily.
It's not to kind of depend on just because you know the language, your creative is not what it is.
So and also your creativity will go up.
Exactly.
And the people can work without any hindrances, right? So that I think is what the technology in the future, whether you are English speaker or you are a Chinese speaker, so the world will be brought together and it will be much smaller. People, they will connect each other, so that with this, the language barrier will be broken. Remember that in the Bible you have a Babel Tower. So the basically said God created this so that they were trying to climb up. So the whole idea of this Babel, actually the Babel is, they have coined Babel for multilingual projects, right? Babel. So the whole idea is the language should not be a barrier for people to function together.
Exactly. So it's about breaking that barrier.
Yeah. So that's the idea of technology.
That's the idea of technology, and that certainly should be, because sometimes when people talk of technology, it's about you need to know English to know what's happening on the PC, but not anymore.
Yeah, you can have Singer right now. So we worked on that for, I worked on for almost 20 years on that, right? So some of us together. So the last 20 years I spent on mainly developing Sinhala on the computer, right? It is now a great success.
And we've come towards the latter part. We got just 5 more minutes to go on the show. Time certainly flies when talking about technology. But I'm quite interested, because off air we were discussing about dimensions. So I'm quite interested as to how you got into this field of ICT and then learning physics, and what made you choose this path?
ICT is something which I was interested in when I was like 16 years of age.
Okay.
When I was, because after, I went up to O-levels in Sri Lanka, then my parents migrated, they were in Hong Kong, so I also went with my parents. So I went to school in Hong Kong, so I was exposed to computing there. However, my bachelor's was not in computing.
Okay.
That's very interesting. I studied, but there was, as a subject, computing was there. At that time, it was also in infancy in US. I studied biochemistry, right?
Okay.
So there I studied, when we do biochemistry, we had to do, even Isaac Asimov, the famous science fiction writer, he was a biochemist. My father was a doctor. I decided to because I love to be a kind of like a scientist, so I wanted to be a scientist. So I studied biochemistry. So we had the computing. When you come to the third year, biochemistry is a very hard subject. So normally in US also you need to have very high your A-levels results, and also you have to have a very high academic. You have to maintain the B average. So we had, when we come to the junior, third year, you would basically finish like a minor in physics. So I had to do physics, I had to do chemistry. So it was a double major because we do a lot of chemistry. We did a lot of chemistry. By the time you were talking about the dimension, so I loved relativity, right? So Einstein, basically the Einstein's special relativity, and I learned that, right? Then once I finished, I started my master's program. I changed again my career, right, completely, because I was good in computing. I went to law school there. I did Juris Doctor program. I joined Juris Doctor program. So I did law. Then once I finished that, because my whole passion was computing.
It came back to that again.
So I came back to computing. And now, basically, after 40 years, we did a lot of stuff, in Sri Lanka. And some of my research, a lot of that. It was an interesting journey, but then it was really, really interesting for basically when I loved learning and I loved knowledge. The dimensions you were talking about, we live in a 4-dimension world.
Okay.
There's a 3-dimension, but if you look at an ant, may not see in 3-dimension. It may be 2-dimension for the ant. So we live in a 4-dimension. The time is a dimension. So the Einstein talked about that time dilation. So the special relativity, and there is also a general relativity. And then I also learned about quantum mechanics. So now when we are now talking about bringing a one single equation, which also I was interested in working on that. However, I was doing so much in computing, but in the night, sometimes I take some of the equations and I look at them. But now, string theory, brings, now there are a lot of, there are two theories right now. One is called quantum field theory is one of them. Those actually, you are talking about multidimensional world, basically. There is a bottle called cleansing bottle.
Okay.
So it has more than 4 dimensions also. If you look at that, those ones, if you type it on the Google, so there you can see this bottle. Yeah, it's without the three dimensional. It's more than 3 dimensions. So they are called manifolds, right, in mathematics. So there is something called tensor calculus. Okay. So you learn calculus. There is something called tensor calculus, and the world that you are talking about now, there is what you call straight lines, right? But it's not the curve lines you are talking about. So it's called tensor calculus. So these, so if you learn mathematics, I mean, somebody's doing, I don't know, in Sri Lanka they teach tensors. I'm not sure, but here they do teach tensors, but I don't know that far. There's something called Riemann coefficients and all of that. So it's a beautiful thing, actually.
It certainly is. But
the thing is, the interesting part is, I had a journey backwards in Sri Lanka.
Whoa.
And a lot of Sri Lankans don't know, even the Sinhala speakers don't know, they had numerals, right? Mm-hmm. In 1815, we had 2 sets of numerals, and actually I did 2.5 year research.
The history of
and
numbers.
Sri Lanka may be one of the first countries to use a symbol for 0, right? So that's the Sigiri period, which is about 4th. The first 0 that we find is a dot and the 0 that we use right now.
Yes.
That is something about 7th century. We would have been using it 4th century. So a lot of people don't know this. I mean, there are a lot of Sinhala people that we think that we didn't have any numerals, but ironically, now we have this dialogue, and I have just finished a research proposal to UNESCO. And we may be the first people to use the positional notation in the decimals, right? So some of these things people don't know. I mean, we basically. So I had the pleasure. I had the kind of because I was so much interested in mathematics. The 0. We encoded in the Unicode right now 2 sets of numerals called Sinhala Ilakkam and Lit Ilakkam. Mm-hmm. And the Lit Ilakkam has a 0. And so we would have been, even before Leibniz and Newton, the like Pujavaliya, the Mairapada Hamduru, would have understood integrals and differentials. So a lot of large numbers, he talks of large numbers. So
the topic is vast. I'd say we can go on and have like a sequence of programs with you.
But I think what we need to educate our young does not know, do not know that we had numerals to begin with, and there is a watch, there is a pocket watch in the museum. That's in Sinhala Ilakkam. We had called a Sinhala pair, 60 the Sinhala hours for a day. So that pocket, the symbols, basically the numerals. I don't think Sinhala people, just when you look at it, they know they don't know what they are, right? I mean, we have not put these ones at the museum also. We never educate. So our syllabus does not carry that we had 2 sets of numerals, and we think Roman numerals and the rest of it. We were one time very good mathematicians, and a lot of these calculus the calculus came from India, the Varahamihiras and this thing, and there were Sinhala mathematicians also. Otherwise, you can't build these stupas, what you see, the large ones.
See the large ones, yes, and it doesn't look very realistic to build one now.
You can't break it, and you break it, and this goes well, there is the arch, let me do this and break it, and you can't build that, right? So you can't do trial and error. It has to be mathematically done.
It is very complex.
Yeah, very complex. So that is why that you use mathematics.
Exactly. Thank you very much for this very interesting discussion we had from 7 in the morning. Thank you very much, Mr. Wijayawardhane, for joining us on the Coffee Hour.
Thank you.
The Coffee Hour, Welcome to Coffee with our morning host. We broadcast a host of programs like current topics, newspaper headlines, and music on Radio Sri Lanka. Tune in every weekday from 7 to 8 a.m.